This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Everything is good here. I'll do my progressive thing. Yes, I'll talk about the weather momentarily. Yes, it's getting nippy here in North Florida. Remember, nippy to me is in the 60s. I know for other people, it's like, what are you talking about, Marlene? 60s, that's great. It is. But let me tell you something. After going through such a hot summer, I want to say that in the space of a week, all of a sudden, and I'm not talking about daytime temperatures, even though those have dropped. We were having a little bit higher than usual because I want to say in the summers here, it's like high 80s in the daytime. We were in the 90s. But in the space of a week, I want to say, unsurprisingly or surprisingly, depends after Hurricane Milton came through, all of a sudden, the daytime temperatures dropped about 10 degrees into the 80s and overnight dipped now 60s, high 50s. And this was, like I said, in the space of a week, right after the hurricane. Weird. What can I say? I'm not sorry. The weather's beautiful. It's nice. And, that's what I've got to say about the weather. Now my husband's going, man, I hope we don't have the equivalent of a really cold winter. And I was like, don't go there. Let's not talk about that, shall we? No, I was already, anyway, as a matter of fact, we already are setting up to winterize. Because we have a large screen porch where we keep a lot of our birds. And some of these are exotics. They cannot handle cold weather. So we're already looking at okay, we got to get ready to winterize this thing. But let me go on to yes. If people ask me about my chickens are all fine. I did put out a video on TikTok about that. I took some of my guinea eggs and I put them under my broody chickens, and I've hatched so far about 11 eggs. Wow. Because guinea fowl are horrible parents. And I've got 5 now in an incubator. I was able to incubate one I already hatched, but it was 25 eggs. So yeah, I'm working on that. So let's see how that goes. Yeah, and then let's see what else. What does country life, farm life do? Oh yes, for somebody like myself, my my lawnmower went out. I had gotten it fixed, and this guy didn't do a good job on it. And so I think it had something to do with a carburetor or something. One of those deals. I did all the stuff that you could do, like what they say over the counter stuff. But anyway, I start calling around to other lawnmower places, and it was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to take it there. I was surprised. Okay, and by the way, the only people, everybody who mows their lawn will get this, but it's when you have acreage. I'm calling and they're telling me, I call one place that we've gone to, and I said, well, what's your turnaround time? And he goes, 4 weeks. Like 4 weeks. And I was like, well, he goes, no, believe it or not, we're having a problem with getting parts. Now is when all of a sudden we're getting the parts to do the repairs. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I finally found another place. They gave me a 2-week turnaround time. But for somebody like me, who's a lawnmower lady, 2 weeks is a long time. I'm looking at my lawn and I'm like, my lawn, like the acreage, and I'm like, oh my God. And I've got a big burn pile out there because we had a lot of down branches because of the hurricane. So yeah, I'm one of those that, the point being that I know I've told everybody I'm going to do a live Halloween, a live stream. I'm going to try to aim for it, but it's been kind of crazy here. So I am going to have a Halloween show. It might not be live though. Depends how I can fit that in there. If not, I will pre-record it and I'll release it on Halloween. And I think you guys are gonna really like it because it's some really, really interesting stuff. And I'm gonna have my wingman Henry with me and all that neat stuff. But yeah, stuff goes on in the background, and I like, as a matter of fact, I've just stopped watching the weather. It was like, this is ridiculous. I grew up with hurricanes, but when you get wigged out, especially when you're getting two back-to-back hurricanes in October, that you're like, what? Anyway, that's a whole nother show. But there you go. That's my part of my. Anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part is who is the guest tonight here at Stories of the Supernatural. This is the first time he's here. His name is Christopher Loric. He is a former U.S. Navy officer, 28 years, and he is the author of a book released last year titled SESG Explorer. All right, it's a sci-fi novel. It's received critical praise. His characters are based on real-life military, scientific, and diplomatic persons that he encountered in his 28 years of military service. And this is his debut novel. As a matter of fact, we were talking right before we started to roll that this is something he had already done in the early 2000s, and then he had to redo it when he retired, and because of course a lot of things changed. And basically, this is I'm going to give you like a little bit of, I don't want to like do a spoiler, but basically it has to do with Earth responding to its initial contact with an alien race, the Kammorrigans. I gotta ask how to pronounce it. By sending a 7-ship fleet into deep space. And what do the humans find? What challenges will they come upon? Could this be the beginning of an amazing breakthrough in global relations or a prelude to war and destruction? All right. And also, this is the part I like, the expedition relies upon human ingenuity rather than technology. The level of tech in the novel was influenced by sci-fi stories of the 1950s, allowing the characters to solve problems. Something that many people now fear with the introduction of AI, we will soon forget how to do. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Christopher?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me
I
on
mean,
the show.
on the contrary, it's my pleasure. And I'm not kidding. You know that is one of the things, when they start talking about the advent of AI into everyday life, that's what people worry about. We'll lose our ability to do normal stuff. Our ingenuity, like figure it out kind of stuff.
No, I agree. I mean, when you look at, I joined the military in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
Internet had come on the scene. It wasn't to the level it is today.
Right.
You basically had some search engine and email capacity, but it didn't have the driving power of the internet today, nor the
Mm-hmm.
fifth generation plus apps that we have today. I was learning Fortran in college.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
know.
I worked with IBM Lotus, and my first contracting job was a 3-month job where I used Lotus to develop
Mm-hmm.
a database or data management system. Not a database, but a management system. What's Lotus today? Who knows what Lotus is? We know
Yeah.
Excel, which is Lotus like. And
Yeah.
we,
Yeah. No, no. It's like you were talking about for people that have been alive a little bit longer, that we've seen this very rapid transition in technology.
Mhm.
I remember once not too long ago, Blackberries were the latest
Oh, yeah.
thing for phones.
Well,
And it's like,
the big brick in your car for your car phone, and now we have
yeah.
these little cell phones. you know,
Yes.
and what was the movie? Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle? Uh, what
Yes.
does telephone mean or phone mean to you? I mean, that one line
Yes.
about
Yes.
phone. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because phone, we grew up with rotary dial.
God,
Uh,
yes. Rotary
yeah.
dial.
And before that was the old, speaker.
Yeah, no, I tell everybody, once upon a time there wasn't even answering machines. People called and nobody answered. They'd call later or whatever.
Right. And we had no caller ID.
No
You
caller
picked up
ID,
the
so you picked
phone
up the
and
phone.
you were like, oh crap, I don't want to talk to this person.
Right. No, and back once upon a time. Well, see, that's another thing. I had family members who had the same phone number for like 30 years, 40
Yeah.
years almost. They never changed their phone number. First of all, people were not as transient, which is one of the things, that made people change their phone numbers. But
Right.
yeah, even now I remember, but they basically had the same phone numbers forever and ever. That's why, they were able to publish one phone book a year
Yeah.
to find stuff. Everybody's now used to Google stuff, Googling or whatever, the internet search. Back then, you had that once a year, either for residential listings or for businesses. That was
Right.
it, but you pretty much knew that everybody that was there in print, it was pretty accurate.
Well, I point that out in the book. In the Navy, on our Navy ships, we have a system called sound energized phones. So there's really no power to them,
Mm-hmm.
but you pick it up and you blow into it and it activates the line.
Right.
And you can talk to another part of the ship.
Wow.
And I incorporate that in the ships. And I actually
Okay.
have a scene where one of my ships loses all power.
All right.
So from the bridge to the engineering, the captain has to use the sound activated phone system in order to communicate somewhere on the ship.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
technology from the early 1900s, World War
Is
One
that as
type
far back as it
technology.
goes?
Yeah.
Really? What?
I
I did
mean,
not know that.
otherwise you have to send a messenger running throughout
Right, 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 right.
ship.
That's what I'm thinking. If you're talking a large area, you had to have a runner.
Yeah, and that was the 1800 battlefields, and even in the
Yes.
1900 World War One battlefields, and even World War Two. But on
Yes.
ships, you were contained where you could have sound activated phones, and
Right. I even
that's
heard that I believe during the World Wars, they even used the homing pigeons or the carrier pigeons in some instances.
hmm
Well,
right,
and I know part of that was just to keep the secrecy of part of it, but yeah.
true. But when you look at technology and the pros and the cons, I mean, Frank Herbert's Dune series,
Mm-hmm.
the robots and AI became masters. They enslaved the humans until they
Yes.
rebelled. And that's why they had no thinking machines in Dune. You had
Because of
the computers were too powerful and they overtook human race.
right, like it was like a cautionary tale of well, in the
Don't let
aftermath, in other words.
right. Yeah, and that's the thing. Dune is a aftermath story, whereas AI, we've worked with artificial intelligence in the modern era since the 1950s, 1940s. I
Well,
what
there's
is artificial intelligence and what does it really mean?
right.
You look at a computer with a program, and I took expert systems in college,
Mm-hmm.
which medicine was one of the key areas. And you could write a program very narrowly focused and could do the job of a human. And what we were trying to do before that was map and develop the brain and write a program that could do what the human mind could do.
Right.
We figured out we couldn't do that. That was too overwhelming. So we
Okay.
broke it down to expert systems, very narrowly focused programs that could do very specific functions. And we have now started grouping them together because in Microsoft or Apple, the two biggies, the OS or operating system is
Mm-hmm.
that umbrella program to link them all together, where now you might get to a real thinking machine. But
Right.
does that solve the problem? Where's the intuition? And that's
Right. Or
why
the
in
creativity, I want to say. I mean, what I understand, even now with all this AI, it's only as good as the information has been given.
oh yeah, and even
It's
if you do give it some level of intuition, what which we call fuzzy logic,
right.
it's still only as good as the person who programmed it,
Exactly.
and it can still get things wrong.
Sure.
And that's why the different video and writing that's based off of AI generation is really kind of irritating a lot of authors and moviegoers or movie producers
Mm-hmm.
and the commercial realm. Um, I don't use AI in the book outside of the mathematics
Mm-hmm.
in the computer. I don't delve into it because I wasn't an engineer. I'm a plans and operations guy. I
Okay.
use technology. I don't develop the technology.
Right.
So I'm not delving into the nitnoids of how it works. I just explain how the crew is using technology.
Exactly. Exactly. The
Right.
and I guess how's this? And I think that it's not that people are worried or from using technology to make life easier. I think everybody is the, and myself included, where like that that's a trope used very commonly in movies where all of a sudden the robots don't need the humans anymore, and of course we come up on the short end of the stick and they decide to like get rid of us. That's it. In other words, they become sentient, and that's the
Right.
part everybody's like. And then you hear the people say, no, you know what? As expert as they can be because of, let's say, they're loaded with information, they're never going to be able to become sentient.
And and that can get into the philosophy of evolution and what really is evolution, which the pure definition is change over time.
Mm-hmm.
But you take a movie that definitely impacted me growing up was Demon Seed, where the computer chose to
Oh my
impregnate
God, yes.
a
Now I was going,
woman.
I know I've heard that title, but after a while, some of these 80s and so, you're like, okay, yes, I remember that. I remember
Right.
that movie. Go
It
ahead, keep
takes
going.
it takes over the house and
Yes.
impregnates a woman
Yes.
and puts its own identity into the baby that's born at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a horror movie.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yes.
sci-fi horror, but
Yes.
I I don't go that way. I mean, my story is an interaction of humans and aliens, but that whole genre, Isaac Asimov. You take a revolutionary thinker like him,
But that was his big thing was robotic sentience. That was always his theme in a lot of his stories.
right? And that's why he wrote the three robotic laws.
Mm-hmm.
And in I, Robot, I believe it is,
Yes.
uh, they're trying hyperspace, and they failed to do hyperspace until they took out of the computer the three laws, and then they could do hyperspace.
And why was that?
People would die.
I knew that in somewhere in there, the humans was going to be good, bad for the humans. So that was it. Let me ask you: are you familiar with Farewell to the Master?
No, I'm not.
Okay, Farewell to the Master is a short story written by a gentleman named Frank Bates. They based the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still on this short story. The movie
Okay.
wasn't much like the original book. It's a short story. I'm sorry, but the premise, spoiler for anybody, at the end you find out that who the master is not the human, it's the robot.
Interesting. Which kind of goes along with Asimov's thinking. If you look at Second Foundation, and then years later he wrote Foundation Earth, I'd have to look at my library. The robots are in control.
Yes.
AI is in control, but they're more of a guide, trying to guide mankind to a better path, a better way of life.
Right. But there's
And
always that what's the because in that story during the whole narrative, everybody, all the earthlings are always assuming, like in the movie, that this robot is like a servant. When I mean servant, it's there serving the
right,
human, as a helper. And if you remember the movie, with Rennie and everything, that's what everybody thinks. But if you read the story at the very end, where everybody's like, and I'm not going to go into it, but basically it turns out that the master is the robot and the human is, which even back then, my point being that the writers were, even prior to all this AI stuff going on, they were already looking down the road and seeing what would happen with humans, with robots that were more than just a machine, more than.
Right. And I guess I'm confused by all the news media and our own politicians. This stuff's been written about since the 1940s, 1950s. I
Mm-hmm.
was reading the novels from the 50s and 60s, which heavily influenced me
Right.
for my writing. And yeah, we don't work on policy till it's right in our face.
Exactly.
I get it. But this sudden fear and we have to regulate, oh my God, AI is such a new thing. Wait a minute.
Right.
It's been around for
It's for a while.
decades.
Yeah.
And what we want to achieve in AI, robotics, computer thinking power, you know, we want to miniaturize, we want robots in the home. And the Japanese are working on a robot to clean your house. And we've already got something like it that, what, circular
Yeah. That
thing that,
Roomba.
yeah,
Yeah. That goes all over the place.
right. And it's smart enough to know, okay, rug, not rug, avoid the
Right.
dog, hit the
My dogs would
cat.
probably kill it or
So
try to
would
kill it or
mine.
whatever. But anyway,
My dogs would attack it as a
yeah,
toy and throw it around the
they'd be,
house.
it'd be like, shut up, you guys, you're driving me crazy. They did that. But but see, stuff like that, I don't think worries people so much. Even though then we get into like, you know, um, because if you, well, in the iRobot in the movie version, I think it's part of the short story, but I'm not sure of Asimov's story, where basically they were putting in all these new versions of the robots that were going to be given a software download,
Right.
and then that would be the takeover for the robots. And I think some people worry about that. All of a
Right.
sudden
And
your house cleaner turns into your jailer or something like that, and that's
right,
just me
or
making stuff up.
your killer if you don't
Yeah.
comply. The actual, well, iRobot, that was never in it. That was
The
purely
Hollywood.
Hollywood. Um, he wrote a second iRobot, but I don't think that was in it. Um, the thing is, he shows the quandary, though, of the three laws and the fallacy of the three laws.
Okay.
You know, and throughout his writings, it's like, oh, yes, we write these three laws, we got it. Everything's going to be kosher.
You don't have to worry.
And yet, he shows where there's a fallacy even within the three laws.
Yes.
Because why? Humans, we make it. In the end, it all boils back down to us.
Yes. And that's the
And
thing, that I think that's the part, because there's I don't know if you've seen, this is a movie, it came out like 5 or 6 years, called Ex Machina. And
oh
it's
yeah,
about this guy, he's like an advanced robotics guy. I don't know if you've seen this movie. And
yeah,
he
it's a
develops,
female robot.
yeah, he's got this line of very female robots, but they're
Yeah,
like human like. Yeah, you look at them, and he gets some guy to come up there, because basically he doesn't tell the guy how much he's testing it, but bottom line, this is a machine. It it can it, it senses when you're lying. There's enough that it picks up from you, whether it's your body language, your temperature, your all the signals that we give off when we're lying,
right.
whereas it knows how to lie perfectly to us. In other words, it's been programmed to know how to act very human. In other
It
words, we're getting
does.
the short end of the stick,
Well,
which,
and I just pulled it up because it is an actual movie, 2014
yes,
release. Uh, and not to spoil the ending for anybody, but it has a twisted ending to
yeah, it does. It's a
it.
great movie, because I was looking at it, and at the end, I was like, oh, I don't know. I took the ending to be like, whoa, we're in trouble.
Well, and again, if you treat artificial intelligence like you treat a person,
Right.
how do you treat somebody in your home, be it family or a hired servant, or heaven forbid, a slave? In the end, what's going to happen? Where's your control? And if you have a AI with incredible strength that
Exactly.
develops a will, and that's
Yeah.
the other part, is willpower, the desire to survive as a human. How do you instill that into a machine? You know, so
That's where the problem comes in. Where you want it to be, I guess, intelligent. I mean, to be able to complete these tasks and have the initiative. But it's like, okay, it would be the same as your stove is old and you decide you're going to take it to the dump, and then it goes, "Nah, nah," you know, or one of the.
right.
It's like what?
And what do you do with the outdated models?
Yeah,
I mean, with the phones, we take them down to the store and we trade
yeah.
them
We
in
replace
and
them and that's it.
upgrade. But
Well, there's I can't remember what's the.
Bicentennial Man with, uh, oh, he passed, the comedian.
I know who you're talking about. It'll come to me too.
Uh, he played a lot of things. Anyway, I'm blanking on his name right now. But he played Bicentennial Man, where he developed sentience. And he even married the daughter of his original owners and prolonged life. And they both kicked off at the same moment at the end of the movie. But
Robin Williams was in
yes,
it.
Robin
Yes.
Williams, yes. Thank you.
Well, there's another. I'm positive it's an Asimov short story, and it's about by this time they've made robots very human looking. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they not the typical like robot. It's a robot. And there's a girl where the same thing. The robot's living in the house, some type of servant. It's being used in the household, and she's so lonely that she falls in love with the robot. Okay, because it's it's been made to be as human like as possible. Like it's like to the point that she starts developing feelings for it, even though she knows it's a robot.
Right.
All right, one of those deals because I think that's a problem we have too.
It is. And it's kind of one of the critiques I got on the book is
Mm-hmm.
I didn't develop any romance in the book.
Oh.
And it's like, well, no, it's a professional military, scientific, diplomatic expedition.
Right.
And at the beginning of the book, I showed that the previous commander was
Mm-hmm.
relieved for fraternization, for having a romantic interlude
Right.
with his aide. And so he
Yes.
was relieved. And that's how Admiral Brannigan gets chosen,
So
or
that's how
the
he's like. He's
event.
like, and he probably gets a talking to. Imagine somewhere like, don't do that. Yeah. Imagine that's like a. And people don't understand in real life that can become quite a problem
It
in
does.
workplaces.
And and actually, when I was at 7th Fleet, we had a carrier battle group commander relieved for having an extramarital affair with an intel officer.
Yeah, it
So
happened. Oh yeah, I've
loss of
worked
confidence.
for people out there that I know, like a parent, and I'm talking something similar as far as the military, but parent company where people would work 20, 30 years. I worked for 20 some years for a telecommunications company, and believe it, the most salacious gossip was those inter office romance,
Oh
which the
yeah.
management you could tell they were like, this is not. In other words, there was no hard written rule against it, but at the same time they didn't want it because they knew it could get ugly. But,
Well,
after you spend all these years with the same group of people, more or less, it was like that. Did you hear? Did you hear about something? And that happened, and it was crazy. But
well,
yeah.
we do have intermarital. Uh, well, not intermarital. We do have within the military members marrying each other, but
Hmm.
they're not. supposed to be in the same unit,
Right.
and definitely not in the same chain of command.
Sure. Conflict of interest kind of deal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it breaks down good order and discipline.
Yes. Yes.
However, we have people from different units who meet, they fall in love, they marry, they have family, and
Mm-hmm.
that's very appropriate. But this is an expedition of exploration, first contact. You know,
Let me ask you something. At what level would you put then the technology that the
uh,
setting is for the book? What at what level?
what we have today, everything in the
Okay.
book, minus hyperspace drive and the shields,
Mm-hmm.
is everything we can do today.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
we have laser technology.
Okay.
We have the ability to generate a lot of power. To power them, we can generate engines actually to traverse our own solar system without using liquid nitrogen. We just have a
Right.
treaty that keeps us from using it in outer space. That's thermonuclear power. We can actually build a engine with that, but we have a treaty that we signed up to saying we won't nuclearize or weaponize space.
Okay.
And as such, it's held us back from developing other technologies to enable us to travel to Mars or
How
the
far
other
out
planets.
is the exploration gone? How far out? Just
Time
solar
wise,
system or
oh no, these guys in the book, they're crossing
yes.
the entire galaxy.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, they receive a message from deep space
Mm-hmm.
and they decide not to respond, but instead put together the fleet of ships to go out and meet them on their turf. So we're the
Okay.
aliens coming to
Okay.
meet. You know, they sent out a message like we've sent out messages, but we go to them.
And what is it? A generic message? I know
Oh
I'm
yeah,
asking you to
it's
divulge, but
no, well,
very
no, it's a very generic message offering relations, technology interchange, and they provide technology in it.
how to
But
serve mankind. Just kidding.
good TV series. Well,
Yeah.
episode. Uh,
Uh huh.
no, but the humans find gaps in the technology,
Okay.
which will only prompt you, hey, this is missing. What, like medicine, there's missing components. Can we get the missing components? And
Yes. Okay.
thus you reveal your location. And we don't trust it. So we go out. And in SESG Explorer, which SESG, it's based off of a real Navy terminology.
All right.
We have a group of ships that we put Marines and sailors on. We call that an expeditionary strike group. Well, this is
Mm-hmm.
Space Expeditionary Strike Group because it's a joint force.
Okay.
Space Force is the overarching command, but you have Navy, Army, Marines, and Air Force. And they're all stuffed on these 7 ships with scientists and a few diplomats. But yeah, the technology, the hyperspace, uh, I just take the message and what man has done, put them together. I don't go into
Okay.
details. Again, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a
Right. Right. No, I know.
engineer.
And personally, some of the sci-fi stories I've read, it's like, no, you're giving me, I don't know. I don't want to know how the hyperdrive, it's like, just,
Right,
I get the idea, hyperdrive, and you can, whatever, or, you go through a wormhole, whatever, however you did it, but you don't have to break it down for me kind of deal.
right. It's just the means of travel.
Yes.
And we get there by a combination of information because you don't know what gaps are key and what they may have or have not developed
So in
in
other
the
words, they
message you
decide
sent.
they'd rather go out there to meet them versus letting them approach Earth is
Right,
basically the way they're looking at it. Okay.
right. And
Just in case.
general order number one is Earth's location is to be kept secret at all times. To
Okay.
include,
Okay.
the fleet will destroy itself before it ever lets Earth be known.
Yes, and
They,
here's my doesn't fail. Yes, but yes,
don't
that's right.
worry, I've got a character in the follow-on book in the library with me.
Yeah,
He's
I'm telling you,
sacking out.
she's like, all right, now she sells back there, and every once in a while she'll look over, like supervise. Oh
He's
yeah, oh that's a
sleeping
big
right
boy.
now.
What is he?
And Akita,
An Akita. Yeah, I was gonna say.
but
Yeah,
he's
no.
sacking out there.
Yeah, they my dogs do. My dogs too. But this one is like, no, I'm gonna go with her and get close to her because I need to
But
supervise and make sure she's doing this right. Right? Uh,
exactly.
yeah.
But no, they go out. They find new civilizations, or
Okay.
rather, not new civilizations. They come across aliens. I don't know if you would really classify them as a civilization as
Mm-hmm.
much as some of them are pirates, some of them are into slave trade.
Okay.
Uh, they deal with a little bit about the morality of, do we let a slave trade exist?
Right.
And they have a discussion, albeit small, but it's poignant, is how do we stop the slave trade
Well,
when
that's
we're
what I
only
was gonna
seven
ask you.
ships?
This is not like I'm going to use Star Trek as an example because that's the one. You know how they have that federation, which
Right.
it was kind of like had bylaws from the different, I guess, whatever planets that belong to it. There's no such thing in your book.
No.
Basically, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Now, this is really about 20 years in the future. The United
Okay,
States uh, assembles its own fleet. It hides it
okay,
from the rest of the world, even
okay.
to send out to meet these guys. So it's a United States expeditionary that they sent out.
All right,
Uh, because why I'm most familiar with the U.S. military and how our diplomats and scientists work together with the military.
right.
And
So they have, in other words, we can't police something that's really what unless they come
light
to
years
Earth.
away, right?
Well,
Where do you have the firepower? Where do you have the authorization, the jurisdiction? Where do you
mm-hmm.
have the police force? And there's seven ships. They're out there alone.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Are you going to dust up something that is morally offensive?
But to them,
And
it's just fine.
right, to that group, this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But we have battled slavery from day one of our existence. Even to this day, we have slavery in our own country. It's
Yes.
it's disgusting, but it exists. And
Exactly.
we
But
can't
at least
stop
here
it
on
here.
Earth, we could, and out in the outer space, and it's almost like I'm going to use again the Hollywood example. You know, the movie Predator. You
Oh
know how they
yeah,
did three movies. Basically, you learn more that this whatever creature. This was what they did. Their moral compass was not like ours. This
right.
was something of their culture where they would go off planet and hunt as a proof of their superiority. The
Yeah.
fiercer the enemy, the better, and they would collect trophies. To us, it was abhorrent, and of course, but
Well,
you
it's
realize
abhorrent to us,
to
and
us exactly.
however, there's elements of our own human race.
Yes,
You take
right.
some
And they
of
would, and you see that it wasn't like just to humans. They would do this on other planets.
right,
They
and
would do
we
these
we had
um
civilizations that would do the same thing.
right, and that's the thing that sometimes, by the way, we have a moral compass, and sometimes we forget. Not everybody, and let's say in the case of the book that you're describing, even in a fictional world, not everybody's on the same page.
Right. And that's why when they meet the Kammorrigans, um, they're physically totally different
Mm-hmm.
than a humanoid creature. Uh,
Okay.
we can breathe the same atmosphere, thankfully. I didn't want the
Mm-hmm.
guys in
Okay.
spacesuits the entire time.
Right. Right.
So, so we're somewhat based organically similar in
Okay.
that sense. But yeah, the Kammorrigans have tentacles, arms, three legs,
Okay.
totally different in appearance. But it like takes 3 days for the Kammorrigans to welcome the humans because, surprise, here's a fleet of ships sitting on their own planet doorstep, and
Okay.
you know
Okay.
they're just
So,
waiting.
in other words, they are, even though they were the one. No, I don't want you to give it. Was the message a ruse or was it a genuine invite?
It turns out it's a ruse
Okay.
because in the end, the humans are in a fight for their own survival.
Okay.
And they run into a problem where they have to decide, do they destroy their fleet or can they escape?
Right. Yes.
Uh,
Exactly. And I'm going to ask you, what is the reason? Is this because this was the way they would trap other civilizations or planets to do this, or were they in need of something and they were just hoping whoever showed up?
well,
What was going on with them that they did this?
their motivation is one of conquering.
Okay.
This turns out this is the first book in a trilogy, and
Okay.
I'm in copy edit mode on the second book,
Okay.
which I hope to have out. I wanted by December. We'll see. Uh,
Okay.
but the third book, I delve a little bit more into the psyche of the Kammorrigans.
Okay.
The second book, they encounter other civilizations that have been conquered by the Kammorrigans. But
Okay.
yeah, the Kammorrigans are all about themselves and putting everybody underneath their own heel, so to speak.
Let me ask you, when you say conquer, do they conquer or do they decimate?
It's kind of a whim on these guys.
Okay. And you
Uh,
know what I mean.
oh
Romans
yeah,
would conquer, and there's other civilizations of scorched earth, like let nobody
oh
hit.
yeah. It really depends. And it kind of depends on the Kammorrigan that's in charge of the fleet.
Okay.
Um, as when we get to the third book,
Mm-hmm.
you meet the Grand High One in the second book, and you get
Okay.
more because you meet the Prime Minister and the Chancellor in this book, and you get a flavor of the Kammorrigans, and you uh, one of it even tears me up now when I read it how one of the human scientists dies at the hands of the Kammorrigans. I mean,
Okay.
it's one of nothing but pain and terror.
Okay.
Uh, but then you meet the Grand High One in the second book, and when my wife read the first chapter of the
Mm-hmm.
third book that I'm actually working on, her only comment was ruthless.
Okay. There you go. And you're like, that's great.
Yeah, you're painting the picture of what
Yes.
the Kammorrigans are.
Let me ask you, are they all like that? Because you know how sometimes you'll read a story and you realize it's not the whole culture or race or whatever you want to call them, civilization, just the ones that are in control or overall just they're just like there's no way we're ever going to be friends. Everybody there, whether they're the ones in charge or not, they're not
Well,
good, in other words.
and uh, in the second book and the third book, the
Mm-hmm.
humans are trying to answer that question. The
Okay.
admiral makes up his mind in the first book.
All right.
Now he has to deal with the political leaders of Earth.
Okay.
Uh, the admiral will tell you they all have to die. We are focused on genocide.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm going with that. Right.
But the political leaders are like, well, isn't
No.
there a chance that,
Yes.
they're not all like that?
Yes.
But when you
Exactly.
listen to the other races that are found out in the second book, they have a totally different opinion of the Kammorrigans than
So they
the
come
Earth.
across other civilizations.
Right. In the second book, the ambassador in the first book, Michael Shea, and
Mm-hmm.
it's his job to do a trade negotiation with the Kammorrigans.
Okay.
And while he has still lingering doubts about what happened at Kammorriga, in the second book, he's trying to find other races, put together a coalition. So it's not just the humans versus the Kammorrigans, but
Hmm.
they get help from these other species, and
Okay.
they get a few of them willing to actually come and listen, because some of them don't even react; they just listen. Others argue back and forth. Some are like, "Yes, we got to kill the Kammorrigans flat out. Just kill them."
Right. And I'm going on the premise, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal.
Kind of.
Like, do we find anybody that, hey, have an enemy in common?
And that's what they're trying to figure out.
Okay.
However, the deputy commander in SESG Explorer, Lieutenant Vice Admiral, Brigadier, Lieutenant General Paul Connington, the deputy commander to the Admiral, uh, he's sent out in the second book to find a enemy that turns out they're now an ally to the Kammorrigans. And
Okay.
Paul, he's sitting here with the moral dilemma of destroying an entire planet and a race. But when they say we're allies with the Kammorrigans, that's it. I mean, he
Sure.
decides right then and there, you're toast.
Because
And
what happens here? They know that in other words, that they can't just withdraw and retreat. They know that these people or this whatever they are going to show up at the Earth eventually.
right,
All right.
yeah. I mean, no matter how much uh, barriers you
Uh
put,
huh.
sooner or later, the enemy will show up on your doorstep.
Okay.
You can have a exterior perimeter, an interior perimeter. You
All
can
right.
have, different defensive lines in between. But
Mm-hmm.
sooner or later, they show up on your doorstep. And it's kind of like some of the discussions in Earth's politics. Are you an
Okay.
isolationist? Do
Right.
you
Exactly.
trade? I mean, part of the discussion on Earth becomes, well, we just pull back to our own solar system and we just hide out, ignore
Yes,
the
and that's
rest of the
not
galaxy.
right. Exactly. But that's the eventual right, and that's what I'm thinking. This sounds like this is not an option, or it'll be a
It's
temporary
always
one.
an option. It's just, um, when I was at War College, we talked about isolationism
Mm-hmm.
and what it takes. And you have to have far more resources in a military with a large military to be isolationist,
Sure.
because you're waiting for them to land on your soil
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to fight them. So rather than being out there with a smaller force to influence, like in
Right.
Europe and Asia, you have to have like twice the amount of military personnel on in the US to be an
To defend your home
isolationist.
soil.
Right. Because they're coming no matter what.
Let me ask you: can they be killed
The
like
Commorgans?
humans? Yes.
Oh yeah.
Or are they difficult to kill?
Uh it's like with any creature, it kind of depends where you place your round.
Okay. All right. Right.
I
That's what I'm asking. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna shoot it and like wherever I hit, I'm either gonna wound it or kill it.
You'll wound it or you'll kill it depending on where you hit it.
Where you
Yeah.
hit it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
I have a sergeant who point blank puts a gun to a Kammorrigan's head and pulls the trigger, uh, and the Kammorrigan just slumps over dead. you know?
Okay. All right.
But it was kind of one of those, yeah. I mean, I would have done the same thing in real life. What the Kammorrigan was doing to the engineer, how he was killing her. I would have done the same thing.
Right. And the reason why I ask is, the way you describe them, how can I tell you, their anatomy sounds like it's totally different
Right.
from ours. And so you're thinking, okay, I might think,
hitting, shooting anything in the head is going to kill it. But maybe, I don't know. That's why I was wondering. Maybe with them, it's like, no, you have to shoot them in the foot and then you'll kill them. Whatever, the
Right. Where's
tentacles.
the vulnerable part?
Yeah.
Right.
Uh huh.
Right. And, what I want to do hand to hand combat with a
Okay.
Kammorrigan? Probably not.
Yes.
uh,
Okay.
with four limbs, two of them being tentacles and eight fingers on their arms or on their
Mm-hmm.
hands, and then that we look at it as they shuffle with their feet and all, but they're kind of dexterous. They can move around.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you'd
That's
be
very
surprised
interesting.
how fast one can move.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was like, yeah, and and the reason why I'm asking is that, because in some sci-fi, even the enemy or whatever from another planet, they're humans. You get it. But here you were describing a character which is alien overall.
Right, and I know where their brain is, but their brain is in their head, and it's kind of pointy head and block. But
Mm-hmm.
I can't really say where their heart is. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
Well, I guess somebody has to do a dissection. I'm only kidding.
it
But
may
yeah,
happen in the third book.
yeah. I was like, we need to find out how they work or what's in there.
Right. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
when you're trying to get an enemy, that's how you figure it out. Is like, how do they tick? What happens with them?
right. And while I don't go into great details of military philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
every book touches on military philosophy. What we think, hey, all right, you got him? All right. Um, the boys are moving around.
Yeah.
um, you know, tactics, techniques, and procedures.
Mm-hmm.
I touch on that.
Okay.
I touch on the fact that this isn't like Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or even
Right.
Star Trek, where you just fire off several rounds and they hit and you get all these explosions.
Mm-hmm.
The technology is equal, and being laser technology, you actually have to ramp up the energy
Okay.
of a laser. So you make contact, but you have to stay in contact
Mm-hmm.
with the enemy in order to eventually get through their shields to start doing damage. So there's
Right.
a time factor there and a little bit of maneuvering the ships
Okay.
is
So
they're
as far as
trying
technology, what you're saying is both sides are kind of on the equal footing with
kind of,
weapons.
yeah.
Okay.
And the humans are a little bit behind initially,
Mm-hmm.
but they start to figure it out.
Okay.
Again,
Well, yeah, and that's one of the
it's
things. It's like, yeah, we'd love to fight, but if we stay, forget it. We're gonna get, we're outgunned. That kind of
right,
deal. So it makes it more interesting. I'm saying when you have two sides that are kind of evenly that they could do damage to each other.
right.
So
And I tried to point out early on, and whether or not I take it into the writing or not, lessons learned because the Marine Expeditionary Unit Colonel, their first encounter, he felt like they didn't do it quite right. They didn't
okay,
use what technology they had efficiently. Uh,
okay,
Unmanned aerial vehicles or drones, you
all
know,
right.
he had capability that he felt like he didn't properly utilize.
So let me ask.
So,
Now that you brought that up, in the context of the book, it doesn't sound like AI is really or robotics is not really there. Like
no,
let's.
the AI is more in the astrophysics computers
Mm-hmm.
and the analytics of
Right.
new technologies or materials for scientists and engineers.
Okay.
But the actual planning and operation is all human.
Right. Which I think is a lot more interesting because even the older movies like the first Alien and everything, the science officer is a robot. Very looks like a
Right,
human. you know, which thinks that the crew's expendable. Um, and let's not even go into Terminator. You know how that ends with Skynet. So, but and in other words, the I want to say Star Trek really didn't have any that much robotics in it. Mostly it was technology.
it on inside the Federation. You're right. It was the technology of the ships
Right.
and their sensors and all
Mm-hmm.
that. They encountered androids.
Yes.
Uh, the one with Nurse Chapel, What Little Girls Want, I think. And then later on, I Mud. They
Right.
have androids in those two episodes.
Right. But in
So,
and of itself, the world, the Earth,
uh,
it's not it's not really
well,
AI. If they're there, they're not. Mm. And then you get the
well,
other ones that the ship is sentient and talks to you. It's like, okay.
right. Well, like the TV series Lex,
Yeah.
where you had an organic ship,
Right. An
a
organic
bug,
ship.
and then a few others like Farscape had organic ship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, even 20 years from now, I personally would not see robotics having such a role as to have them on U.S. naval vessels or in airplanes.
Yeah.
I still see a whole lot of
Well, I think a
human
lot of people make the
activity.
mistake of thinking robotics is infallible. Like when it comes to, like you said, machinery. There's been a lot of times that things have happened because the robotics or the mechanics of something doesn't work right. Like
Oh, yeah.
somebody trusted that it was gonna do whatever it was supposed to do, and it
Well,
didn't.
even now, when we test vehicles on the road,
Yeah, yes.
we're not there yet where you have a self driving vehicle.
What was it the other day? I heard somebody got run over. Every once in a while, you hear that. It runs somebody over. And it's like, what happened to the sensor?
Well, and even with this, so most cars today, you have the reverse camera. When you put the car in reverse,
Mm-hmm.
you get the
Yep.
little camera. It still says the driver is 100% responsible for anything
Sure.
with the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
You may have sensors to detect
Yes.
movement and a camera, but really, it's still up to you behind the driver's wheel as to what the vehicle is doing.
That's why I'm sure maybe you've seen it. That well, they made a movie and then they made a couple of episodes of Firefly
Oh yeah.
where I love that because it's mixed like a space travel with quasi Western theme where things are basic. I really
Yeah.
like it because of that. Because basically, it's the humans that have to figure things out, even though they have space travel or
Uh,
interplanetary travel.
like I say in the book, I have a ship lose total power, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And all they have is either run down the passageway or the sound activated phone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have the engineers going to the reactors trying to get them back online. And because sooner or later, they are going to run out of breathable air. I mean,
Yes.
everything is shut down. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
just like in the U.S. Navy or any navies, the ship is your lifeline. You lose the
Right.
ship, you lose your life.
Right.
And that's what they're in. And meanwhile, the admiral on board his ship sees, uh, what is it, the Defiant, I believe is the ship. She's lost all power, and he's in the middle of a space battle.
Right.
So he has the ship down, he has a crew he has to save, and he also is fighting for the rest of his fleet.
What how you prioritize that? It's like,
Exactly, and that's how battles work.
yeah,
What
yeah,
what do you
exactly.
do? How do you divide up your forces? And being a strike group, the integrity of the group is a must. to maximize your firepower. And yet, if you break that integrity for a variety of reasons, and the situation required a lone ship to go in, and at one point the admiral's instincts kicked in, and he realized we're in trouble. I have a ship in trouble. We have to do something now.
Right.
Because he recognized the situation was brewing that was going to cost him an entire crew and ship.
Of course. And I'm thinking even in scenarios like that, it's like how can I tell you? In other words, there's yes, things are urgent, but if we do this now, we could there's a way to save this. But after this point, that window of opportunity is gone.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
So
so
I
if you're
don't
gonna think of something, think of it now. That kind of thing. Like
exactly. The military still talks about luck and luck on the battlefield. I
yes.
personally don't believe in luck. Opportunities appear due to interaction of people.
Okay.
You have your terrain, you have your climate, you have the combat situation, and people will make an opportunity or somebody will make a mistake and an
Right.
opportunity arises.
Right.
The luck that I believe they're talking about is the person on the other side recognizes the opportunity and takes advantage of that opportunity.
Okay.
And, people, well, that's luck that the opportunity appeared. Somebody created an opportunity
And then
through
somebody
either,
recognized it.
and somebody recognized it and took advantage of it.
Or they can
And
extrapolate, this is happening, and therefore this is what's coming right after, or whatever, blah 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 blah. And like you said, they see the opportunity. Like an
right,
hour from now, they will.
right. And that's why in the situation when the ship loses power, right before the ship does, the admiral's looking at his tactical picture and recognizes they're out, to use a old terminology, they're out of joint, they're out of the proper alignment where they need to be, and he immediately starts putting everybody on red alert and moving his fleet because he
Okay.
recognized if anything happens right now, a ship is lost.
Okay.
But
Right. Right.
that's experience too. That comes with
Sure.
years of experience. You know,
Makes me think of the sinking of the Titanic, where you hear that they were pushing off rowboats half empty, and I was like, man, that captain wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. You know,
yeah,
I'm sure there's gonna people gonna be lost, but still, it sounded, besides being thought to be unsinkable, but that kind of scenario
oh yeah,
where,
yeah. Once and you start to see your ship take a nosedive, where half of your ship's going to break off. Yeah.
yes, God,
So
yes. I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to say this because you were in the Navy, and I wanted to find out if this is true. I had heard that sailors, anything having to do with ships, they're very leery of setting sail on Friday the 13th or the 13th period. Is that true? I even read one time that, and I'm sure maybe this was a while back, that even Lloyd's of London, which would insure all these naval, ships, different, they would be like, no, if it's sailing on the 13th, no, no, we're not going to insure it. And that if it was either merchant marine or they would say, they said, oh, you're going to sail on the 13th. Somehow they would manage to wait after midnight. So technically it left on the 14th. And I was like, okay.
well, in the 1800s, when did Lloyd of London's get created? I think it was in the
You always think of them as
1800s.
being like, of God, they've been around for so long. As far as I think they're even in existence now.
Oh, they are. Yeah, they were the original Lloyd's of London begin date. Yeah, there's the oldest, 1689
There,
was.
wow, I didn't even know that it went back that far.
Yeah, so I can see them saying we're not going to insure anything on the 13th, or
If it says
Friday the
sail, if a ship
13th.
said sail on the 13th, it's like, nope. So, of course, who's going to sail, without being uninsured, especially if you're a merchant ship or anything like that.
And that was the key thing about Lloyd's. Uh, and they came about because of lost cargo and lost ships.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I can see them in the late 1600s all the way into the 1800s, maybe even the 1900s, saying Friday the 13th or 13th, if you sail, no insurance.
And that's what I'm
Yes,
saying. We kind
you're
of like, okay, I
invoking,
guess we'll just have to wait till tomorrow.
right?
It's like, who's going to.
But I have not heard that at all in the U.S.
Okay.
Navy. It's
All right.
like when we're scheduled to leave port, and in today's global traffic,
Uh-huh.
uh, you just don't leave a port to sail to another port with all your cargo. That is actually arranged.
Okay.
Your departure date and arrival date are known ahead of time.
Okay.
And a ship will actually have to moderate its speed of transit to meet the arrival date.
Oh, they do,
Otherwise,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
otherwise you could have, like an airport, not all terminals can take an airplane.
Okay.
Not all ports and all terminals at a port can
So
take a
that they could
ship.
dock, I imagine.
So you time it where you sail in, you dock,
Mm-hmm.
you unload, do whatever you need, and either move off or take on new load and then move
Okay.
off.
I hadn't thought of
Because
that.
that pier has a limited time for that ship because it has another ship inbound for that pier.
Okay.
So yeah, globally, these guys are watching ships from all the countries and where they're at in transit.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll actually communicate with the ship and tell them you're getting behind schedule, increase
Okay.
speed, or ratchet it back, you're going too fast.
Okay.
And then, of
Right.
course, you get the storms and all that. And that
Exactly.
really changes up the
Oh, I'm
schedules.
sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Was there any, I'm going to ask this, and I know this is woo woo woo, whatever. Was there any area when you guys were out there sailing on the oceans that it was like, oh, this area is like, hey, let's hurry through here. This part of the ocean is like a weird place, anything like that?
There are danger spots. Any strait that you're going into, like the
Mm-hmm.
Strait of Malacca,
Right.
which is right there at Singapore,
Yes.
uh, and this is known, it's not confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Our tactic, technique, and procedure was to travel through the strait at night.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Because of the, oh, why? Because,
Well, it's a high transit area.
mm-hmm.
All right. So
Lesser
uh,
ships.
lesser amount of ships, but also the threat level is lower from pirates and other
Okay.
groups. Because pirates don't like to sail at night. They don't like to try and charge a ship in the middle of the night.
And the reason, and it's really funny because most people don't realize, you always think of pirates like in Jack Sparrow or something like that.
Right.
But people don't realize that there is such a thing as modern day pirates in parts
There
of the
are.
world. And
There.
and also, before they opened up the what was it, the Panama Canal, I know that going around the Cape of Good Hope, that was very dangerous because
Oh, yeah. The
the
weather
currents out
primarily.
there were
Yeah.
it was a very dangerous crossing because of the currents, I believe, were really bad, or well,
Oh,
also to the
yeah.
ships that were there.
Well, you had South America, Argentina at that point, and then
Mm-hmm.
Antarctica coming up.
Exactly.
So that whole cross, there's two oceans meeting. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever you have two bodies of water meet,
Right.
it's like on the northern shore of Guam, you have the Pacific Ocean and the Philippine Sea meeting. And that's a very dangerous body of water. So anytime you have bodies of water that actually meet, they create
Mm-hmm.
such undertows and currents that it's easy to lose your life, even in a sailboat or a steamship. It's easier if you have a ship under power,
Right.
unlike sail power, but it's
I
still
mean, 'cause
dangerous.
sometimes I've seen these people that do this round the world solo thing on a sailboat, and I'm like, you're crazy. You're crazy. You know,
Yeah.
you hear, I mean,
Eh,
some of the stuff that can happen to you, you're literally out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like,
oh
eh.
yeah,
It's like,
and the laws. I mean, I would if I did it, I would definitely carry a shotgun with me. But then you run into the laws of other countries. It's like,
yes,
but I'm out here alone. I
right. And
could
you're
have
hoping
run
you're
it.
not going to have to use it. But then again, and
Yeah,
believe it or not, what I worry more about would be like what you just said, whether a really, or some place that, your ship is, at a disadvantage as far as whatever, it's like, that's crazy. You hear some of those things, it's like, no,
yeah.
no.
To me, you have to be a really good sailor,
Yes.
especially to do that by yourself. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to understand navigation, and
Mm-hmm.
there's different types of navigation.
Yes.
There's stellar navigation, there's shore navigation, to name two of the basics. And how many people can use a sextant nowadays?
Nowadays, no.
No, we'll
No.
use our GPS. Wait a minute, I lost
I
power.
mean,
My GPS fell overboard.
I mean, tell you something. People nowadays, a lot of people don't know how to do long division. Forget using a sextant. If you tell them do a long division problem for me here, no, no calculator, okay? And they'll be
Well,
like, huh? What?
take
You kidding?
go
No.
go hiking with the map and compass. Shoot me an
Yeah.
azimuth.
Yes.
What?
What?
Let me pull out my phone.
Yes. My GPS. Yes. Things like that. And let me tell you something. Everybody that I have an atlas there. I'm really good with directions, but I always think, God, if ever the satellites go down, this is me doing like a apocalyptic
Right.
kind of version. I've got a map. I can get around, you know, because yeah, once upon a time before there was GPS, people knew how to read maps and things of this nature. And I'm going to give an example. My son, he does a lot of construction and carpentry, and he tells me,
Mhm.
"Mom, nobody knows how to do anything anymore. I'm always busy."
Well, yeah, you got to take the square there, that triangle with the edge to cut
Yeah,
and all.
he goes like people
But
don't understand angles but even
right.
stuff around the house and things like that. So
Well, even the cell phone, I mean, um, how do you charge it when you're away from your car? Well, if your car breaks down where you can't get it going, you
yeah,
only have so long battery life,
yes,
and then what are you going to do? Because
mm-hmm.
as I used to tell my guys in the military, yeah, you may have this toy. And Admiral Willard, when I worked for him, always said you have to have a backup to your backup when it comes
Yes,
to communication or anything.
yep,
Well, in the end, it's my hand and a pen. If all else fails, I
right,
can always write on my hand. I can wash it,
yeah,
find
yeah,
water,
you can,
and I can write it again as long as I have ink.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes, people
but
don't realize that left to your own devices, I think that's part of the problem. Let me tell you something. And as to yours, I have a little solar battery, a USB bank. I'm
right.
not kidding. Everybody's like, okay, Marlene, it's like, no, I have thought of that scenario. All
Hmm?
right, and this is considering if this doesn't go up in smoke. This could, if this falls at the
Oh
right
yeah.
angle, that's the end of that. But as a matter of fact, I'm gonna. Okay, Elon, I want to do a plug for you. The other day, I was talking to my husband, and I'm thinking, I think we need to get a Starlink just in case.
Yeah. And I don't. Um, so I'm not totally paranoid, but
That's the way I see it too. Not totally, just a little bit.
right. I don't have like OnStar on my cars
No, I don't.
because
I don't either. I'm like that.
I don't want anybody shutting down my engine but
You better
me.
believe it. No, of course not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And GPS is bad enough,
Mm-hmm.
but people will, sadly, they'll go uh, in the military. I've seen it where they're carrying a GPS watch. I'm like, what are you doing? You're sending a signal because you
Yes.
have to link with a satellite.
Yeah.
You're giving away your own location. You
Plus,
have
in
to
some
stop
cases, you're
this.
giving off the your vitals. You're giving off everything about yourself.
Yeah. And there are people who, oh, yeah, look at my Apple Watch. It
Yeah.
tells me my heart rate.
Oh yeah.
You
No.
can tell your own heart rate with a finger and a watch.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. People don't think that it's like that. And I guess that's part of the. I want to say how technology sometimes entices you
Hmm.
because you're thinking, oh, well, what's the big deal? So it knows where. No. I mean, I
Well,
even get mad. My truck has one of those things where unless you turn it off, the motor will. If you're stopped, it
oh,
turns
yeah.
off. Hate that. I
That
hate. I'm
came
like,
out of
oh,
Europe. Yeah. Our
yeah,
cars have that too, where you have to turn it off.
yeah.
But I use that in SESG Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the Admiral and his top people, his plans, his scientists, his operations, they're trying to get away from the Kammorrigans, but not lead them to Earth. And they can't figure out what is going on. How are the Kammorrigans able to follow them
Okay.
through
Interesting.
hyperspace? And
Right.
it all comes down to a tracking methodology.
Yes.
And they have to figure that out. So,
Yeah. And you know what? It's great if you're lost, but you're a problem when you're trying to flee, as far as getting
right.
tracked.
Exactly. Not that I ever plan on going off the grid and hiding from anybody,
No, I
but
know that.
you know,
Yes,
if you
absolutely.
do, what does it take to get off the grid and hide? Eh,
Nowadays, God, I don't think that. Well, I mean, if you go by satellite, I mean, nowadays, I don't think
eh,
there's any way to do that unless you
it,
go underground. And that's about
and
that. I mean, as far as not being found, I guess is you know,
it would
and
be difficult.
yes, it would, it would, it would, it would.
Like,
And even though, because I tell everybody, you know how nowadays they're solving all these cold cases with DNA and they're doing DNA
mhm,
matches because now that they did and see the cousin or somebody did an ancestry search and now all of a sudden,
right,
hey, before you know it, you got the sheriff knocking on your door. It's like, hey, 40 years ago, you're a man, or they find out the
right,
person's dead. But anyway, they were talking about that now at the rate that we're going with all these what they call the deep fakes, that between that, that people that they'll be able to either reproduce photographs or movies that are faked and
right,
or even produce DNA, like in other words, plant DNA like yours. In other words, frame you using the infallible DNA stuff where it'll eventually, they say, get to the point where in a court of law, you could have a defense attorney say, well, that DNA could have been planted. In other words, it won't be something where some laboratory can do it. It'll be something where that DNA is not an infallible reason to prosecute or convict you. In other words.
right. So if you watch Angel Has Fallen,
Mm-hmm.
they do exactly that.
Oh, really? Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
they actually plant Gerard Butler's character's DNA.
Okay.
They gather it. They trick him. Uh, a company decides they're going to use him as their scapegoat, and they collect DNA from him when they
Mm-hmm.
had him out doing some training and all that,
Okay.
and they plant it uh, in the control vehicles and so forth. So it's like, we got the DNA. He's the man.
Right. Yeah, we'll put him there. We'll make him be at a certain and I wasn't, I mean, I know which movie you're talking about. I hadn't seen it, but it will be more commonplace than, having a very, well paid, obscure, well funded laboratory somewhere that can reproduce DNA and plant it. Enough
I,
that, how's this? It'll be so available that it'll be enough to make a, a doubt, place doubt as to, hey, this is not as foolproof. And then what do we do as far as
yeah.
trying somebody because nowadays DNA is like, your DNA is there. That's it. You're toast. You're guilty.
Sadly, they make it they make it sound infallible.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
For people who know how to do it, it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to collect a person's DNA.
Sure.
Uh,
Yes.
and you actually see how different movies collect fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
With glasses, especially with glasses. Very easy.
Yes.
But if you want the DNA, you don't empty the water out of my
That's right.
glass. You collect it in order to get the DNA samples that are actually in the water. And, you know,
And no, and some of these DNA tests have become so sensitive that even stuff that was tested 10 years ago
hmm,
that they couldn't get a match, or the DNA was maybe too degraded. Now they've gotten testing so advanced that they retest, and now they can get a match, or mitochondrial DNA or something.
right. If you have bones that are not so deteriorated, you can get
Mm-hmm.
some good samples out of that for the crime labs.
Yes.
But thankfully, I don't have to explore that.
Well, let me ask you, Christopher, so you said now you're working on your second book and you're hoping to release it later this year, or what do you think? Or it's going to go for
uh,
2025?
my original plan was for December of 24,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm still going to strive for that. It's
Okay.
called Minerva. It's the follow-on book to SESG Explorer.
Okay.
And I'm actually, right now it's on hold because I'm in copy edit mode on
Okay.
Minerva.
All
But the
right.
last book, I actually have the first two chapters written on it. I'm writing on the
Mm-hmm.
third chapter, and I
Okay.
already had the outline and all that. Like I said, you'll learn more about the Kammorrigans in the third book.
Okay.
There's definitely that interplay and interaction uh,
I'm not going to ask you
between
to
the
give away what
races.
happens with the Kammorrigans. You're gonna have to read it.
Right. And if you go to my website, ChristopherLoric.com,
Yes.
I'll be uploading soon like I said, the library is being refurbished, but I'll be uploading Minerva's picture
Oh,
onto my
okay.
website.
Okay. So that's how you're
Uh,
spelling it. Okay. Minurva.
right. And it's the second book in the Brannigans saga.
Okay.
Um, and
Perfect.
then the third book, uh, I plan on having out a year after I get Minerva published.
Okay.
Just go hardcore on writing it. So that's the general plan for the Brannigan saga.
Okay. All right.
Meanwhile,
So
I
but I'm
got
gonna
some
have
short
I'll
stories.
have a link in the credits of the show to your website so that they could go there, and from there I'm sure they have links. If they could find it, we're on Amazon or any of the other places.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and I have
Hmm.
buttons going right to the page
Right. Exactly.
for it. Yep. And I'll be uploading this picture relatively soon to the website with the projected date of
Of
publication.
release.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's been a
So
pleasure to speak to you, Chris. I really,
thank
really
you.
enjoyed it. Let me tell you something. Your book sounds super interesting. It really does.
Thank
It
you.
really, really does. And I want to wish you the best of luck, and I hope we'll talk soon. I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, please do. Please go ahead and order it, get into it,
Yes.
and look forward to Minerva. There's new species being introduced and new interactions.
Excellent. Excellent. I love
Yeah,
it. I love it. Well, take care.
thank you.
Bye bye. Oh boy. Wait. There we go. There we go, guys. I hope you liked that interview. I did. Because see, his angle on sci-fi is great. It's like, I'm not kidding. A lot of especially not the earlier sci-fi stuff, like when you hear about Asimov and all these other writers, they were, but these later ones, like it's like AI is like That's why I like the Firefly series, because they're kind of like, there's space travel, but at the same time, there's technology, obviously, but there isn't that much thing where, like, in other words, and for anybody that's seen Firefly, they have the female character who's the mechanic on the ship, like the Scotty kind of, in a way. But even though it's more basic when you listen to her when she's working on it, um, there's no robot to, I don't know, to be how can I say, the one that resolves the problems, the jams. Oh, come on, let's face it. In Star Trek, some of the best parts are, Scotty, get me out of here. Like, Scotty, we have 5 seconds. Scotty, the lithium crystals. And of course, Scotty is a human, right? So it's not the same if the computer tells you, sorry, no, no, Captain, count down to destruction, or you cannot fix this. It's like, well, that's which, by the way, feeds into that thing that sometimes is, the infallibility of AI or robotics, as far as that either we give it too much credit, and by giving either AI or technology too much credit, we give it too much power because we think of it as being infallible, and come to find out, it's not as infallible, because we always seem to think that the human component, the organic, as in us, we're the only fallible things. And, something that's made of metal and wires and plastic or whatever, it's not. And it is. God knows. Like you say, having has my phone right here, a bunch of stuff that's a piece of technology, even though it's supposed to be perfect, and just doesn't work sometimes, and just goes belly up and does its own thing. It goes crazy. I'm sure you've heard of people having their phones just go bloop, and start doing crazy stuff, and for no reason, not because it fell down, and it's not nothing like that. And so that's I like that angle of his story, where it's about humans in a sci-fi setting, but they're resolving the problem is like with your brains. How's that? I'm like, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm the first one that'll use a calculator, but I think it's detrimental when, like he said, you have a plan B, which means if I don't have my phone, if I don't have a calculator, if I don't have the GPS, if I don't have, can I figure this out? And you might think, well, I might never need to. Well, you never know. Sometimes you might find yourself in a very peculiar situation where it would be good to know north, east, south, and west. Let's start with that. Right? Like, where do I go from here? Because this is the thing. Once upon a time, when people used to have maps, like paper maps, God forbid, if anything, the map was there. Unless it caught fire or, you lost it. But, you could look at it and say, okay, we're here, or I'm here. I kind of thinking, okay, this next little town is 10 miles. If I keep going on this road, I'll find there's a little town here. But if your GPS disappears off your phone and you're in a place that you're not familiar with, especially, let me tell you something, I live in a rural area, so I'm not talking here in an urban setting. And even then, even in urban settings, depending on how big is the city and if you're familiar with it. But once you step out of it, you could be going someplace where you are totally unfamiliar with it. Your car breaks down, something happens. Your GPS is bye-bye. Okay, there's, in other words, and your phone's not working. Let's go. Your phone takes a meltdown. You can't use it to call anybody and say help. You can't call AAA or whoever. The GPS that's not it. So here you are, stuck. You got a flat tire. Then what do you do? There's some people that sometimes they don't even know what road they're on. because they're just strictly going by what the GPS says. And the GPS says go on this whatever 2 miles. And that's it. But if you turn everything off and you say, where are you exactly? Kind of, pretty much. They can't tell you, oh, I'm on state road, whatever, or blah, blah, blah. They're like, And that's why I'm saying sometimes technology is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-technology or robotics or anything like that. But when it diminishes us, our own, okay, what's the word I'm looking for? When it kind of takes away our self-sufficiency, how's that? Then it's not a good thing. Because one thing is to depend on it, but God, if anything happens, I know what I'm doing. I know more or less how I can find help, or I'm going to get to the next town or whatever. But when all of a sudden something like this just poof could be gone somehow, and then what do? You're like, oh. And then sometimes it's not a big deal. It's not a big problem. It's like it can be solved. But other times it could be a big problem, especially if you don't know what you're doing or where to go or who to solve it. Because I'm the first one. Like I said, I've been alive long enough where this wasn't always, but now I recognize, God, this is great. I can call, I can find out, I can ask for help, I can call what are the hours, I could, this solves a lot of problems. And we live life based on the availability of this technology all the time. And then when it's not there, it's like, what happened? Because now you break down and you could, like I said, call AAA, call a relative or a friend, hey, come help me out, I'm stuck, blah blah blah. Okay, but now let's say there is no phone, or like that famous scene from a lot of the horror flicks or whatever. You know, there's no cell service, there's no you don't get a signal where you're at. It happens. Yeah, it really does. And let me tell you something. I myself, one time, I was going cross country to California, and I was driving, and I was with me and my friend. As a matter of fact, we are driving a Jeep out for my son who was stationed in California. And since we were going through areas, through these roads, east to west, Florida to California, that they were pretty deserted out there. There was nothing out there. And I worried about something happening, no cell service. And I knew by the time the sun was setting or it was getting, I'd find a place to duck into, to stay at a motel or something. And I probably could have, I would get up really early and I'd hit the road. But I was always concerned, like, hey, if I get caught out on the road, besides, I don't know where I'm at. What if something happens and I have no cell service? Plus, or, man, let me tell you something, some of these places, you would get off on an exit and there'd be like a gas station and 2 little stores and that's it. I'm sure maybe there was something way out there, but as far as for somebody who you needed help, you're on your own, baby. So yeah, one of those. Yeah. Can you tell Marlene gets a little bit paranoid, like a little bit into preparedness? Yes, I am, because just and again, I admit, when I was living down in Miami, and first of all, it was a city I grew up in, I knew where everything was. You could drop me anywhere and I knew where I was going. Anywhere. I knew where everything was. Different scenario. But when you're pulled out of that, how can I say it? This is what like if somebody blindfolded you and said, hey, it's like, I could go anywhere you want. Whatever you like, go there, don't go there, and that place, yeah, after Sunday, when they take you out of what you're used to, everything changes. And if you have any instinct of self-survival, you always think of I'm not saying get paranoid, but you always think, well, if this happens, how do I solve it? Getting back to Christopher's book, the theme of his, which is, how do you figure out you're in a battle against aliens who you really don't know that much about, and you need to defeat, and they're out to get you, but you got to figure it out. and let's go even down the road. Let's say you had some type of robotics or computers or whatever. Remember, these computers are only as good as the information that's been fed into them. But since, let's say, this race or this culture, whatever they are, these aliens, they're unknown to us. We've never fed this information into the computer or whatever it is. So you ask them, how are the Kammorrigans? And the computer's gonna go, the what? You see what I'm saying? The unknown. So that's when you have to like think of like, let's, I'm gonna get into that. Let's think outside the box kind of thing. Yeah, that's exactly when you do it. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you liked this interview. Please go to mppellicer.com, sign up for my Substack newsletter. You can find links there. Again, at my MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you're going to find links not only to the videos, which, by the way, not only YouTube, you can find me on Rumble, BitChute, Steemit, CloudHub. Same thing with the podcast versions. You find me all over the place. Go to mppellicer.com. Or you could also find it Stories of the Supernatural or Nightshade Diary or Supernatural Storytime or Eerie.news. All that stuff, though, where you're going to find all versions of that is on the website. And it has links. I even have links either to a favorite podcast platform, or if you're trying to find a podcast platform, you can either listen to, let's say, the MP3 files from your browser or download the MP3 file, or I even have a link for iOS systems or Android to the different types of podcast platforms that you can find the show on there, depending, of course, what kind of phone you have. All right. So at least I didn't get my son, my Navy boy, to call me, but I have a message from my daughter. I'm telling you, I wonder if are they getting together? Are they colluding on this? I gotta see. She's sending me, and it's really weird for her to send me a text message at this time, but we'll see. All right, guys, till next time. Again, I'm gonna have the Halloween show out. I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it live or not, but I have a lot of fantastic guests coming up, a lot. And again, I'll have a link to Christopher's website on the credits of the show. So till next time, thank you for coming every week and spending this time with me. Take care.